Newspoll has just been released by the Australian newspaper. It remains razor thin, the margin here in this election. It is 51-49, exactly the same as whereas it has been for the past couple of weeks. But if you are looking for the ray of hope for your respective sides of Team Red and Team Blue, the Coalition's primary vote, remember we said it always had to have a 4 in front of it to be guaranteed a victory. Well, it's about as close as you can be at 39%. Labor is also up to 37%, so both of those parties have received a tick in support. The Greens static at 9%. One Nation is down 1 to 4%. Palmer United Party is also at 4%, and Others has dropped by 1 point. In the preferred Prime Minister stakes, and you would think that the Tiers are part of this, 45-38 still, significant lead for Scott Morrison going into the election. That's why the launch was all about him. That's why the marketing's all about him. That's why the messaging is all about him, because clearly he maintains, after this campaign, no matter what gets thrown at him, still a pretty dominant lead there as the preferred Prime Minister. In terms of your satisfied, dissatisfied performances here, Morrison's performance is, he has a dissatisfaction rating of 44. Shorten has one of 49 that is there, so no giant surprise. But the headline here, 51-49, remains, if it was a nationwide swing, and it won't be a nationwide swing, that is a 2-seat majority to the Labor Party. But I also understand there may be some further polling that will be in the Australian newspaper tomorrow that shows the story even better for the Liberal Party in quite specific seats. Let's go around the table now to see what everyone thinks of this. 51-49. Is it more of the same, or at a primary vote of 39, Michael Kroger? What does that tell you about the national picture here? And 51-49, is that where Howard sort of was when he lost the popular vote in 98, or you have to be 50-50 to be a shot?
No, I think you don't have to be Howard prove that. Different circumstances, and you know there are arguments about it. But he got 49.02. He won 80 seats, by the way, with 49%. Labor had 51 and got 67 seats, so Howard had 13 seats more. The Coalition can win on 49%. As we know, it all depends on where the numbers drop. Labor, of course, have big margins in their safe seats. So they waste, if you want to use that word, a whole lot of hard Labor voters. Amongst that 51 are a hard lot of Labor voters in safe Labor seats. So Scott can certainly win on 49%, and if he wins Herbert and if he wins Lindsay, because I think he's going to get Wentworth and he's going to get Indi in Victoria, he's a good chance. He's a good chance if if Victoria holds up, if he doesn't lose 2 million in Western Australia, who knows what's going to happen around Brisbane, etc. So he's a chance. There's a pathway to victory on 49% still.
Is it, as Bill Shorten says, it's a goat track versus his freeway?
No, he's not a freeway. He's a road to nowhere.
Correct answer.
I suppose the other point to make, Paul, to make about the polls is this. This is a really important point. These polls, now Newspoll's the most accurate of them all, but generally speaking, as you've said before, worldwide and in Australia, these polls have been dramatically wrong on so many occasions where someone's been a certainty and lost, and everyone's been bewildered, and you have what they call the shy Trump voter syndrome, which is people who say to the pollsters, oh, yeah, but they're not saying what they're doing. Now, that's got to be more favourable to the Coalition this time than Labor, because all of the older people, well, they're not going to vote for the Labor Party under any circumstance. All the people in the property industry, tradies, people who work in the building industry, the home construction industry, they're not going to vote Labor. So there's a whole lot of votes there of people that might say, oh, yeah, Labor, who haven't got any intention of voting for the LP. And, of course, that was what happened in America, where you saw, a lot of the outside votes say, oh, yeah, Hillary, forget it. They didn't want to vote for her in a million years, but they wouldn't tell pollsters that.
Well, that's the whole point, is that, look, I think that the media who want to continue Adam Giles with the inevitability argument, they are completely disinterested in actually looking at the evidence that's sitting in front of them. I repeat, there'll be a little more detail about some marginal seat polling, and that's essentially where this comes down to now. Where, sure, the hardest of hardcore blue areas might come down a little bit, the hardest of hardcore Labor areas might go up a bit, but it doesn't matter there. There's about, as always, at every election, about 20 seats that are going to be the ones that flip in one way or the other. But if it was national, we're only talking about a 2-seat majority here for Labor. Sure, a win's a win's a win, I get it. But This ain't the woke revolution that some may well have been writing about. This is game on.
Well, it's not the revolution. I think if Malcolm Turnbull was still the leader, there'd be a 30% swing in the primary vote against the Libs and the coalition.
Correct.
But Scott Morrison's turned it around, and I've used that term scamentum a few times. He certainly brought it a long way forward. And at 51-49, if you extrapolate that across those 151 seats, sure, two seats to Labor, but I think Michael Kroger is spot on. It's about the seats that matter, the marginal ones, the 20-odd seats. And if you see things such as Herbert coming to the LNP, Lindsay to the Libs, holding Reid and Gilmore, which I understand is going to happen, Indi, Tasmania, and I'm told that the seat of Solomon in the Northern Territory will almost certainly fall the way of the coalition, which will see a change in Chief Minister in the Northern Territory. Those sort of numbers put the election still too close to call from my point, but you're not going to get that sort of commentary from the mainstream media out there. They'll just keep saying that Bill's a shoo-in, the same way they did with Michael Danby in New South Wales before Gladys come and wiped the floor with him.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Now, also, well, I'll get to a point about that in a second. Georgina, obviously, fingers crossed, we hope that something happens in the seat of Mayo as well here. But what's your thoughts on this margin, how close it is versus the inevitability argument that the security guards, who sometimes pretend to be press around Bill Shorten, are doing everything they can. He's playing with puppies. He's doing safe things here.
They were cute puppies, I must say. And they were in Kooyong in Josh Frydenberg's electorate. So they're Josh's puppies. Look, it's quite clear this is going to be a very, very close election. We all knew that. The left and their cheer squad in the media refused to believe it. But, you know, you can just see step by step Scott Morrison and his team have been clawing back that support, and to have a primary of 39, almost 40% is incredibly encouraging. And we've got what, 6 days to go. I think the signs are looking very, very good for us, but it will be incredibly tight. As Michael and Adam said, this is going to be a seat-by-seat proposition, which is why it is so important in seats like Mayo. I say with a lot of self-interest, but interest in my community and Australia. It'll be so important in seats like Mayo and Indi and Wentworth and Warringah that we do not get these independents in, because all they will end up doing, as they have done so, and we saw this in 2010 with Oakeshott and Windsor, they will back in a Labor government if given the chance. So it's incredibly important for the coalition to win those seats and hold on to government. That'll be good for the country. No, agree. Michael, I've got to ask you here too about Victoria. Has anything changed in the past couple of months where things have got better, worse, whatever here? Because obviously Corangamite, very close seat, line ball, assumed by redistribution to be going the way of Labor. So, I don't read too much into anything that might be happening there. But, it seems to me that there is this strategic play from, the Independence Party, and that's what it is. They're not independents. They are a party. They're all putting out. When you put out the same ad with the same script, you're a party. Okay, that's the game. And they're of course all out there because if they can rob the Liberal Party of 10% here, 15% there, 20% there, then basically, and then sort of pass that off to Labor, they'll be able to win those seats. In Victoria, there's particular phenomena of that. We know about Josh Frydenberg, but he should be able to live through that. But what about places like Flinders? Because, Fiona Patten was able to get back in the upper house, and that broke my heart. Please tell me Julia Banks isn't going to get a run.
God, I hope not. I mean, that would be appalling for Victoria and Australia that someone so treacherous as Julia Banks could win, but I don't think she's going to. The answer to your question is what's changed? Yes, quite a bit's changed. We have been slowly, inexorably recovering from the trashing we got after the leadership change in August. So, as we know, after August, the brand of the Liberal Party was very damaged. It was particularly damaged in Victoria because of all the bullying allegations. They hit Victoria very hard because Julia Banks was the one making the allegations, never produced a shred of evidence. Correct. But it immensely damaged us. So, the change was in August. Gladys Berejiklian had 22% swing against her in the Wagga Wagga by-election in September, 19% in Wentworth in October, 5% against us in Victoria in November. The whole brand was trashed for the latter part of last year. As each day's gone by, that has receded somewhat, as Morrison's performance has got better and better, and he's been, quite frankly, I think he's been stunning in the last month or so. You know, people thinking, you know, people were very upset at Turnbull losing the leadership and the way it was done, now thinking, well, OK, this Morrison's not so bad after all. So, you know, and so what has happened, the feeling, the enmity towards the federal party as a result of the change has slowly been receding, and views of the party have been, you know, getting better as Morrison and Josh Frydenberg have become more to the fore. Will it be enough to hold seats like Dunkley and Cranwell? I certainly hope so, but of course they've had a redistribution against them, which makes it hard for them to hold. But Chris Cruther and Sarah Henderson have done a fantastic job campaigning, and God, I have on Saturday night they both win.
All right, we'll see what happens here. Just a reminder, despite the fact that we watch all of these things as closely as we do, we have compulsory voting in Australia, and as always on a Sunday night, we'd like to remind you that even though you're sitting here paying attention, there are equal votes around the country, and compulsory voting should be celebrated, and by that I don't mean actually. Have a look at some of the compulsory voters that were at a thing called the Midnight Mafia Festival on the weekend. Oh, they brought their mum, that's nice. Compulsory voting in 2019. You have as much of a say as anyone else does. Everyone gets a say.
Hey, Paul, can I mention something about the pre-poll voting before you get off the voting system?
Sure, I'm just, okay, righty-o. You can talk to these pictures if you want. Pre-poll, yeah. Go for it, mate.
Well, I wanted to make a serious point, which was that I think it's fair to say most of the people who voted at the pre-poll have voted illegally.
Why?
Millions of them. Well, I went to the pre-poll yesterday to vote, and the fellow asked my name and registration, address, and had I voted before? No. And before I got my ballot paper, he said to me, "Are you entitled to vote today?" Now, I thought you could vote at the pre-poll as of right. I thought the rules had changed, so you didn't have to have an excuse. Anyone could vote at the pre-poll. But no, you still have to have a reason for lodging a pre-poll vote. So he said, "Are you eligible to vote today?" I said, "What do you mean, am I eligible?" And he said, "Well, do you comply with one of the 8 things on this list?" So I looked at his list and, you know, was I in jail? No. Was I in hospital? No. Was I going to be prevented from voting for religious reasons? Was I in fear of my safety? Was I going to be interstate? None of those. I said, none of these apply. And he said, oh, well, the top one probably applies. He said, are you going to be out of your electorate? I said, no. He said, oh, well, everyone just says they're out of the electorate, so they all vote. I said, right. So I said, you're asking me to tell an untruth to a Commonwealth Electoral Office official. And he said, oh, no, I'm not telling you that. I'm not putting the guy in, by the way. He just said, oh, no, that's what people say. I said, so you're telling me 2 million people are going to be out of their electorates on election day, and that's why they're entitled to vote pre-poll. He said, well, they all say they do. So the bottom line here is we have a situation where the electorate thinks they have a right to vote at pre-poll, or they're telling a fib to the electoral office. But I would think if 2 million people are going to be out of their electorate, more than 2 million on election day, I would be staggered. And that's really the only serious grounds upon which people are entitled to vote pre-poll. So
how do you challenge that, though?
Well, you don't. I mean, I'm just making the point that
the system's ridiculous.
The system is ridiculous. Well, I of course refuse to vote.
Michael, you've just stopped this bloke in. I hope this bloke's still got a job tomorrow. I hope he's not like that bloke who was earning $200,000 and got the punt.